All right, folks, welcome back to the Crisis Report. This is your alert for November 21st, 2025. Here we go. We are brought to you by Augusta Precious Metals. We appreciate you being here. Please do everything you can to hype this video and help. We're getting extra crap from you-know-who, so if you could, it'd be great. Blah, blah, blah. Hungary's Orban says next week's crucial for the U.S. plan for the country I cannot mention because they suppress the crap out of your channel when you do. Begins with a U and ends with an E. X is starting to show following for the account, for different accounts. It'll show which country or region is created, account based in which country or region, and connected via which country's app store. So X is now showing that for different accounts. Sanctioned Russian oil tanker made a U-turn on the way to Venezuela after a U.S. warship intersected its route near the country's coast. 3 killed in a 5.5 magnitude quake after it hit Bangladesh. Indian fighter jets are crashed at the Dubai Air Show. One Indian fighter jet crashed at Dubai Air Show. Zelensky says he will not betray Ukraine, talking about the peace plan. Yeah, great. Now I just got the freaking video suppressed. Grizzly bear on loose after attacking a school group in Canada, injuring 11, according to BBC. U.S. Fed official still says he's room for a rate cut in the near term. We have a bunch of political or financial stuff going on. I'm going to do a separate video on PrepperNow for this. U.S. House overwhelmingly votes to condemn socialism hours before New York City Mayor-elect Zoran Mamdani White House visit. Another macro headwind to watch, Japanese government bond yields are moving in a straight line higher. Since news emerged that Japan is considering launching $110 billion in stimulus, 40-year government bond yield has surged to a record 3.77%. Keep watching the sentiment. The S&P 500 is down 5% from its record high, and bubble collars are in full swing. Again, the S&P 500 averages 4 declines of 5% or more per year. AI bubble callers who have been bearish on the S&P 500 for the last 40 plus 40% of upside are now running. Japan's government says it may intervene before the Japanese yen to dollar ratio reaches 160. Over the last 2 months, the yen has gone from 145 to 157 as a $110 billion plus stimulus package is coming, 2% away from intervention. MicroStrategy Bitcoin position is almost red. Bitcoin just extended its decline to a low of 80,500. That's $6,067 away from MicroStrategy's entry point of 74,433. This puts Bitcoin minus 8% away from MicroStrategy position, turning negative, and that would be very bearish for everything. 46 days ago, MicroStrategy's Bitcoin was much higher. S&P 500 erases gains and turns negative on the day, now down 50 points in 40 minutes. Another flash crash in the S&P 500. These continue as sentiment basing is swinging. NVIDIA has gained 450 billion and lost 600 billion over the last 54 hours. That's a swing of over $1 trillion of market cap, 19 billion per hour for the last 54 hours straight. These are not fundamental price moves. Something is going on. U.S. Labor Department announced the October CPI inflation report has been canceled. Bad. Reason I'm told Trump decided to bomb Iran is that the Israelis said if you do not bomb Iran to take out the bunkers, we will use nuclear weapons. They had never threatened that before, so Trump thought that bombing Iran might actually save us from World War III if it kept the Israelis from using nuclear weapons. Also, the CIA has developed the capability to take over your car and remotely hack it so they can manipulate it, according to former CIA officer John Kirikow. And here's what's going on with the Japanese massive stimulus package, and everyone's freaking out right now. Timing and scale, genuinely significant. Real implications for global markets just ahead. They've approved a $21.3 trillion yen economic stimulus package. That, of course, is the 110 million, trying to jumpstart their economy. It has been contracting since quarter 3. When you add in local government spending and private sector investments, the total impact balloons to 42.8 trillion yen, substantially larger than last year's 39 trillion yen package. Government is throwing money at everything. $20,000 or 20,000 yen cash handouts for child subsidies, gas bills, $7,000 per household over 3 months, rice vouchers, gasoline taxes, tax-free income thresholds, pumping billions into strategic sectors like AI, semiconductors, shipbuilding, everything. Japan is in a really major problem. This could implicate the rest of the world. That's how this goes in a Great Depression type style, if you know your history and Kreditenstalt. And here's where it gets messy. Japan's debt is already over twice the size of the economy, literally the worst among developed nations. Massive spending spree means they need to issue even more government bonds, probably exceeding 6.69 trillion yen that they borrowed last year. That spooked bond markets. Japanese government bonds yields have hit record highs. It's gotten crushed, hitting 10-month lows around 157 per dollar. 160 per dollar is a problem. So what does this all mean? Short-term stimulus is creating chaos. Bond vigilantes are punishing Japan for fiscal recklessness, and the market is worried about Japan's deteriorating fiscal health and what happens when you have massive government spending combined with potential central bank tightening. Uncertainty is bleeding into global risk assets. Implications are pretty significant. If Japan's fiscal situation continues to deteriorate, they keep issuing bonds at this pace, it could force the Bank of Japan hand on rate hikes sooner than expected. That would strengthen the yen and potentially trigger sell-offs across equities and bonds in the U.S. We saw a preview of this in August 2024 when this all happened. Nikkei dropped 12% in one day. Flip side, if the stimulus actually works and injects enough liquidity into the system, triggering, which would not trigger the BOJ rate hike, it could eventually be positive for risk assets as the yen weakens and its weakness drives capital into alternative investments. So there's a bit of a question going on right now. They need intervention. It could go positive, but there's a really big risk that it could go globally negative. BlackRock just deferred fees on private credit fund because it failed a collateralization test. Nothing to see here, of course. Totally normal stuff. Happens every day in all these healthy markets. Feels a lot like 2007. This one person is saying, what could go wrong? Well, private credit is the cycle's subprime mortgage, and this is what will bring the markets down. All these private credit things, your Affirm and all that kind of stuff. There's a lot of excess debt that we're not accounting for. U.S. is losing blue-collar jobs for the first time since the pandemic. Year-on-year job losses have hit 59,000 as manufacturing industries are losing jobs at a rapid pace, while growth in construction and transportation is nearly zeroed out. Country you shall not mention in Eastern Europe that's currently in a war. Representative of the United Nations has rejected the peace plan. 1, will make no concessions. Nothing is up for negotiation. 2, we need more. We need your money. And 3, the only way this ends is if you give us money. Super Hornets from the Ford Carrier Group have been spotted operating over the northern coast of Venezuela today. First time with transponders on. 20% of the deployed U.S. Navy fleet are now in Southcom. European car industry is going the way of Nokia, and the cell phone industry, as in see you later. They have no competitive AI industry at the core of the autonomous driving. EU car makers currently have zero to very little foothold in the electric model as well and hybrid technologies. These geopolitical blunders of the EU, because they're idiots, are making it worse. It's antagonizing China, and they're making a major component of EU automotive industry, both in market and manufacturing, dive and decline. They are basically at war with Russia, provided the EU will achieve energy and resources, and yet the EU politicians are still barking at China for no reason. When the EU car industry implodes, there will just be a collection of failed states and a ton of recent migrants. Good luck to that. Russian President Vladimir Putin has convened an important security meeting. Council is also expected to make a statement. Coming days are going to be extremely difficult to President Xi. According to sources, that country that shall be remain has agreed to a majority of these proposals, on a draft, and a deal is close. It could come on Thursday, as in Thanksgiving, the right time for such a thing, according to Trump. And your joke of the day is Eric Swalwell is officially announcing his run for California governor. All right, friends. Yeah, you might want to keep prepping. I'm going to do a video on PrepperNow about the market chaos. It's about to implode. Maybe not. Who knows? We'll see. But yeah, there's a lot of craziness out there. We're brought to you by Augusta Precious Metals. Keep prepping. God bless, and we'll see you on the next one. PrepperNow is now being sponsored by Augusta Precious Metals. They're a member of the Better Business Bureau, and you can check them out online at AugustaPreciousMetals.com, and a great place to consider putting your retirement if you want to put it into a gold or silver IRA.